So you got Damian Lillard in Milwaukee, you have Jrue Holiday in Boston, and I think it's fair to say, like, when the Lillard trade happened, all the title odds, bumped Milwaukee to the top. The Boston trade happens, Boston kind of moves back to the top. There's a very clear 1-2 in the East. We can talk about that, and we probably should. It's hard to know, like, how much we're belaboring kind of pretty well-covered talking points about Boston's depth issues, injury issues, and Milwaukee's, like, what are we going to do with Dame on defense stuff? We can circle back to that. Have we entirely forgotten about the Cavs? I know you love the Cavs. I know that the, record they put together last year when they had the second best net rating in the league suggests that we should love the Cavs. I know the fact that they addressed the weakness we harped on all last year by getting Max Strus suggests they should be better. I know the fact that everyone that matters on that team should be at least as good this year as last, with the exception of Darius, Garland, and Evan Mobley, who should be way better and are already really good. I'm not saying the Cavs belong necessarily in the Milwaukee Boston tier, but, like, people are talking about Miami before getting to Cleveland when you're thinking of, like, who's going to give these top two teams a hard time. And that seems just so totally backwards to me. I get it. The Heat made the finals and the Cavs lost in the first round, but I just don't know how you can look at the Eastern Conference landscape. Maybe this is the way to put it. And Philly's falling apart, and not put Cleveland as number 3 with a bullet, with a really good chance to give either of those top two teams trouble. Like, is that over? Like, who else are you even considering as the third best team in the East? I think it's Cleveland, like, in an absolute runaway. And when you hear the discourse on these top two teams, Cleveland just isn't in the conversation, and I don't understand it. That's not a question. I just want you to validate my how upset I am about that.
Well, it's validation, and I think, look, because of the uncertainty that Boston and Milwaukee, which they had to begin with, there was different versions of uncertainty, but now that they've caked in a lot of these depth questions on their team, like, are we just sure? Like, yeah, I want to see those two teams meet in the playoffs for sure. And I think that based off the top end of their talent, Boston's top 6 is just beyond compare right now.
Yeah.
But, like, if we're looking at the regular season specifically, the Cavs are in the mix for the 1 seed. Like, you can't guarantee me right now, based off some of the depth concerns, some of the injury concerns that both those teams have, that, like, I don't know what, if you force me to bet on, like, an X amount of dollars on both Boston and Milwaukee having a better regular season record than Cleveland, I'm not betting more than like $100 because I don't want to lose it. There's a chance that they're going to be that good. And I'll shout out and then drag him through the mud. Justin Rowan from the Chase Down podcast pointed out to me that Darius Garland was more of an in-motion shooter last year than I had credited. And I looked at the volume. I knew he could be a good shooter. I did not realize the volume when he was in motion. That is monstrous for this team to have him and Max Strus on the court at the same damn time. Now, I will drag him through the mud for this. I was flirting with picking the Cavs to come out of the East. And then the Bucks make the Damian Lillard trade. But Justin Rowan kind of talked me out of it, just saying, like, they're not ready. The experience is there. He is super high on this team. He acknowledged to me that there is an outcome where they could come out of the East. He's just not ready to go there yet. And I understand, but why? Honestly, why? Is it because if the reasoning is because Giannis and Dame exist, or because Boston's top 6 exists, I am more than willing to be, yeah, that's fair. But, like, you hit it on the head. Darius Garland, and even more so, Evan Mobley, are at the beginning of their prime arcs. Evan Mobley is still in his developmental arcs. And if he adds any sort of layer to his game where he can deal with being more physical on the offensive end, he does a better job of being more physical on the glass. Although, again, the Cavs need to improve their rebounding, especially in the playoffs. But, like, Evan Mobley spends so much time away from the basket.
Right. It's the Jaren Jackson thing. Yeah. He's just not around the basket.
And let's go through the defenses of, like, the Eastern Conference and how all these different teams match up with Milwaukee and Boston. Is there a tougher matchup for either of those teams than what Cleveland poses? Like, maybe I would say maybe Milwaukee's toughest matchup. Can I even say that?
You're right. Milwaukee's toughest matchup, exclude Boston, is Cleveland, because now Damian Lillard.
Ask you, is it more Cleveland than Boston now that you've gotten rid of Grant Williams, Time Lord, and people were complaining because I was calling Time Lord RW3 or RDub. I prefer that to Time Lord, but I will call him Time Lord now. It's like you get rid of those two. You got rid of Marcus Smart, who was also another, and there's no like defending Giannis, but like you can't expect Al Horford's been one of the best Giannis defenders since Giannis entered the league. Al Horford is pretty freaking old.
Yeah.
At this point. So just please go ahead.
No, that is a huge factor to me. Now the Celtics, like, I have a harder time saying, oh, Cleveland's really going to give Jrue Holiday and Derrick White. Like there's not going to be a better backcourt defensive tandem in the league. But I take your point of like the Celtics did lose. I mean, when healthy, RW3 was a transformative defender when used the right way. Grant Williams was good on Giannis. Al Horford is older. Porzingis may be hurt, may have played really well in a contract year, may not be as good of a rim protector as they need. Like, we can have a conversation about that. But the Milwaukee side of it, where now it's Damian Lillard and not Jrue Holiday, that's the point of attack defender when Donovan Mitchell's running a pick and roll and Brook Lopez is in a drop, or flip it and make it Darius Garland. Like, you can just, that's like item one on Milwaukee's what the fuck do we do, series set of priorities against the Cavs, because Cleveland just has the guards. Now, a lot will depend on Strus being able to pull a defender out to the corner or wherever he is, which the Cavs just didn't have. But they're better positioned to really make their guard duo, who can hit threes off the dribble when the screen is set for them, or pop into mid-rangers, or get into the upper paint and move the ball. Like, Milwaukee is going to have trouble with that, I think, or at least the Bucks are going to have to make concessions against those two defensively, like give them something that I think very few other teams are going to put the Bucks in that position as like obviously as the Cavs can. And like, yeah, I mean, the idea, sometimes the analysis probably needs to stop at Milwaukee has Giannis and Dame, and Brook Lopez could win Defensive Player of the Year and no one would bat an eye. And so, like, yeah, they're just going to beat the Cavs, but the matchup things are at least like worth discussing, I think, in a real way between those two teams. And like you said, the Celtics have 6 guys, and then after that, I don't know, like it's not like you got world beaters, and they're old. Some of the guys like Horford are older, they're injury risks. Like, just to say, like, no, Cleveland should not probably have better odds to win a title or to make the finals, but it's like they're not. I put it this way: Cleveland is closer to Milwaukee and Boston than I think anyone else in the East is to Cleveland from like the underside of those like standings. Does that make sense? Like, there's more likely to be a top 3 than there is to be a top 2 and like 6 other teams we view kind of equally.